Welcome to Good Money Moves, the show where we share financial tips and advice to help you feel financially empowered. I'm Jenna and LeAnne, AVP of Marketing here at First Alliance Credit Union, and joining me today is LeAnne Trom, our Loan Administration Manager, and I've invited LeAnne here today to talk about a very important topic that I think doesn't get talked about enough, and that is, what do you do if you miss a loan payment, and what are the consequences of that? So we're going to dig into that and talk at length about it. And before we jump in, though, why don't you take a minute to just kind of introduce yourself, LeAnne, tell a little bit about yourself and your role here at the credit union.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Jenna. As stated, I'm the Loan Administration Manager, which really covers our Member Solutions Department. Sometimes people like to refer it as collections, but we like to refer it to as solutions, and our Consumer Loan Processing Department. So I have been with the credit union actually for 20 years now, so it's unbelievable. Yeah. Love the credit union, have seen our growth, have learned a lot, have met a lot of members, have had a lot of great success here at the credit union, and glad to be here again.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for coming back, because I think the first time you joined us, we talked about budgeting. So you're back, and thank you for coming back. So let's just jump right in. Okay, so if somebody realizes they've missed a loan payment, what's the very first thing that they should do?
Yes. So I'm going to continue to...
That's okay. I'll just refresh you. I'll start back at the top of the question.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right. So let's just dive right into our topic today. If someone misses their loan payment, they've just realized they've missed it for the first time, or maybe they knew they were going to miss it, and that due date passes, what is the first thing that someone should do? What's that first step they should take if they have missed a loan payment?
Absolutely. What I would always advise is contact your lender, contact the credit union. Let us know, hey, I accidentally missed this, or something came up, I had an emergency or a repair. This is when I can make the payment. Really, communication. Our department is always willing to hear what you have to say. We are always willing to make a notation or help you with something if we need to figure out a budget or a game plan. But again, communicate. Yeah. Reach out to your lender, whomever that is, and communicate your situation.
Yeah, because I imagine, if you're in that situation, especially if it's maybe, whether it's happened just this first time or it's happened multiple times, there can be a feeling of kind of some shame or being afraid to talk about what happened, because you're just like, oh, I can't believe this happened, a little bit of embarrassment going on. So I imagine a lot of people do hesitate to reach out. But, talk a little bit more. You mentioned communication is key, but dig into that a little bit more. Why is that so important to have that kind of first outreach to your team or just somebody at the credit union to get that conversation started?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the importance of it is we know that you're aware of it. We do send automatic reminder letters. We do send texts. We do send emails. We pick up the phone and we try to connect with you via phone, because your timely payments are just as important to us as they are to you. Yeah. And sometimes we get a call and it's just simple, like, hey, my payday's changed, or I changed job, or maybe I took on another bill, and could we just change that due date? Something as simple like that is really easy to fix. That way you avoid any late fees, you avoid the letters that are sent, the calls. And we don't want anybody to feel embarrassed. Things happen, or maybe it's the first time something's happened. That's okay. It's realistic. It's reality. We're human. But when somebody calls, at least we can notate it. Oh, they knew about it. They're planning on paying the 15th. Okay, that way we can notate it, and we're not making calls to that person to ask them when they're going to make the payment, because they've already let us know. Yeah. So it's not that duplication of communication. And again, we already know. Yeah. Sometimes there's a simple solution of, hey, maybe there's just $5 that got missed. Maybe somebody rounded up or rounded down, more like rounded down, and they didn't realize, oh my gosh, it was only a few dollars.
Yeah.
We can easily set up automatic transfers. There is so many things that we can do to help somebody keep on track.
Yeah.
And again, we don't want anybody to feel embarrassed or ashamed. And sometimes you just literally don't have the funds. And so sometimes it's like, well, I don't know what to tell the lender because I can't offer them the full payment. If you can't offer the full payment, maybe you can make a partial payment.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, I can pay this today in good faith. Or maybe I can satisfy the interest payment. I don't have it all. But those are things, if we communicate, then we can probably put somebody at ease or really reduce that financial stress because they're like, oh my gosh, that was easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Or I didn't think of that. Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah. Well, and I like that as you're kind of talking through this, you even brought up some easy solutions to help people. I don't know that most people realize they can move their payment due date if it just isn't lining up right. Because, to your point, if you change your job or, maybe you were in a position that was being paid twice a month and now you're just getting paid one time a month, like that changes how you budget, and you don't really realize just how much that can affect how you spend your money and when you need to make those payments. So I think, a simple solution like that, like that's the reason you shouldn't be afraid to reach out and be proactive in that communication. And you kind of started to dig in a little bit into kind of like what happens in the background with your team once you realize that somebody has missed their payment. Can you talk a little bit about, what that looks like for your team when they're doing that outreach, and at what point are they making outreach? You mentioned there's a couple different ways that your team might communicate with members when this is happening. Just kind of talk about that process so members can understand, like, we're not all just sitting around like bashing members who haven't made payments. Like, we genuinely want to know how we can help you get back on track. And so kind of talk through that process a little bit with how that looks on the behind the scenes, if you will.
Sure, absolutely. As I mentioned, there's a series of letters that automatically go out. We also look to say, okay, our goal is definitely to try to reach somebody before 30 days. We'll try to reach somebody maybe if it's a couple of weeks. We might try between that 2 week and before that 30-day mark. We try to make some sort of other attempt, whether it's a text or a phone call or email. Because again, at a 30-day mark, that's when you report it to the credit. So bureaus, and we do report to all three. And so we do want to stop that. We want to stop that reporting so that it's not late. So again, we're also looking at, when does somebody get paid next? What is their history like? Was there a lower deposit than was normally in somebody's account? We try to look at the picture as well. So then when we reach out, we're kind of prepared, and because we might see some things that are unusual or that maybe are a factor that will help us come up with that solution. So again, by us trying to be proactive, trying to make those courtesy calls to prevent those late reportings, we really care about that. And in doing that, having that communication back is, again, I can't stress how important that is, because we can make some sort of assumptions, and we can kind of look at the picture. We can look at the line of credit, or we can look at maybe the status of a checking account, and we can make assumptions. But without that person calling in to tell us really what's happening, we don't always know what the next step is going to be. However, we have resources as well. We work with partners such as Green Path. They're nonprofits in the area. Family Means, United Way. So, if we're not the ones that can help somebody, we have some partners that we can at least share with that person if it's something a little more long-term. If it's a short-term problem, we have extensions. We have interest-only payments. The credit union has a skip-a-pay program that we offer to all our members, and you don't have to be past due. You actually need to be current. And so that program is offered on particular loans twice a year as well. No questions asked. So that's something that somebody might choose to take advantage of. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that there's an issue, but it's just allowing them that short break. You bring up again a lot of great community resources that we can connect people with. If you call in, and there's just, everybody's situation is different, but we do have a lot of great partners in the community, and to your point, a lot of great programs that can help you either proactively get ahead of a missed payment like skip a pay, or to your point, if the payment is just not doable for that period of time, the interest-only payments, those types of things, there's lots of options out there.
You did bring up that 30-day window, and I want to talk a little bit more about that because I think there's maybe some misconceptions for some people about what those kind of time periods are. Because I think when we talk about late payments, you often hear it talked about in 30, 60, 90-day increments. Can you kind of talk through like what the progression looks like? You know, once they hit that 30-day mark, you mentioned it kind of starts to impact their credit score. Is there other implications to that once it gets beyond that 30-day mark and kind of starting to approach that 60-day mark?
Sure. And that's a great question, Jenna. There can be. Loan types, there's statutes, there's rules, there's consumer protections. All those things come into play. However, a lot of people will call us and say, oh my gosh, I'm late. I had to pay a late fee. I'm like, no, it's okay. I mean, right, you don't want to pay a late fee, right? Yeah. However, again, that 30-day mark is key, then that 60, and then that 90. So there are notices that the state of Minnesota requires to send, plus other states. There's different timelines. There's different statutes. However, if somebody is 2 payments behind, that's where we kind of, as the credit union, our department, we start to get a little more concerned because what's happening? Because the farther things go, the harder it is to catch up. Yeah. It's harder to maybe make up that payment, but there still are things where maybe a payment and a half or a payment and a quarter, or again, we may just have to look at there is an illness and there is a change of jobs. Maybe there's a divorce or a birth of a child or moving. Well, we understand those expenses come into play, and we really want to stop that progression of that late reporting sooner than later. However, if we have no communication, we have no payments, we don't know what's happening, then we do have to balance the credit union risk. We're here for all our members. We lend all our members' monies out. So we have to look at the big picture as well and say, okay, maybe there's a little bit more seriousness happening. Maybe there's more things going on. And therefore, then we may have to look at, we may have to send out a letter for a vehicle that says, this is your timeline. This is your time frame. This is serious. Please reach out to us. Please talk to us. If those things, again, lack of communication, lack of payment, no messages, well, then again, we have to look at our whole membership. And again, as I stated, the risk. Yeah. And those things sometimes can lead to a repossession, for example. If there's a mortgage situation and, we're 120 days, for example, we have nothing. Again, those aren't things that we want to do whatsoever. But again, there would be a succession of letters. There would be notices. There could be letters received and sent out on our behalf by our legal counsel. Those are things we really, really want to avoid. That's when it gets really serious. And some of those things is where it's hard to turn back the clock and maybe come up with a solution. Yeah. Not to say we wouldn't, because there's steps along the way. If something changes, we've done a lot of creative things here at the credit union.
And I imagine, too, it is a little bit dependent on how much the member is willing to communicate and willing to work with you and follows through on the commitments that they make on their end a little bit, too. So it's kind of a two-way partnership in that way.
It is.
We want to help get our members back on the right track, but they have to want to get back on the right track as well so that we can kind of work together to bring them current.
Exactly. Exactly. Again, we try to look at things, and I've been here, as I mentioned, for many years, and we've done some creative financing and creative payments or consolidation, or, we've been able to pay off something with another lender, or maybe take that risk of if all the pieces and all the things, the ability to pay, the willingness to pay are there. Well, we're going to take a deeper dive into those situations and say, okay, again, is it short term? Is it long term? Yeah. What are we talking about here? Yeah. Is there some possibilities?
And I think one thing you mentioned, just kind of in passing a little bit ago, was you mentioned like things like medical situations come up where people are maybe unable to go to work, or it's impacting their finances significantly. And that made me think of the debt protection options that we have on our loans. And not obviously every member chooses to add that to their loans, but I can imagine that those are tools that your team relies on a lot if our members do have that to help them kind of cover some of those types of scenarios.
Exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've seen that really benefit members who do end up in kind of these life circumstances that are like beyond their control?
You bet. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the debt protection program that we offer, there's life, there's disability, there's hospitalization, there's unemployment. And really, it's so many cents per $100 of the balance of the loan. It's automatically added to the loan. We calculate your payment and your interest in that debt protection with the lender. They can explain all those programs. However, if somebody calls in and does say, I've been hospitalized, or I've been unable to work for 14 consecutive days, we're always going to look to see if that member chose that program. Sure. And what a relief to say, oh my gosh, I think you forgot. You do have this program. We can file a claim. We can work with our partner, TrueStage, and you can file that claim, and these payments could be made while you're off work. Even if it's retroactive. A lot of people say, well, that already happened. It was in the past. That's okay. As long as we can support that through documentation and work with the team there as they need particular things. We can go back a year ago, and we can provide some relief, and those payments could be made. So that program is again been a lifesaver, a credit saver, a stress saver, a financial. Things have even been potentially paid off with that program. And if somebody doesn't sign up for it right away, it is a voluntary election. But we can always look at adding that to most of our loan products later.
Sure.
So, gosh, or maybe I had it on one loan, I didn't have it on the other, and I just realized what a game changer that was for me. It saved my credit, saved my stress, saved my financial, and we can always look at options to add some of those programs. So,
awesome.
So,
we are almost out of time, but I do want to dig into a little bit. If somebody has gotten into the position where they've missed one or two payments, or maybe they think they're going to start missing payments, like what are some proactive steps that they can start taking to kind of rebuild and get back on track? Obviously communicating with your team and using resources we have, but what are some other things that they may be able to do just kind of on their own to kind of get back moving in the right direction, kind of start to get off of that path of missed payment, late payment, missed payment, that cycle?
Yeah. Biggest thing is start to make your payments on time. So if there's a way that we can maybe skip a payment or maybe make an interest-only payment and get that loan current, that is key. Getting that current and staying current is really the key. But also, what are other lenders? Is there somebody besides the credit union? I would encourage somebody to say, what do they have to offer? Maybe there's a program with that other lender that you didn't realize was out there because you didn't contact them. Well, contact them. Ask them. They're going to tell you what kind of programs they may or may not have. There's also possibilities of maybe we can look at some sort of consolidation. Maybe that's something that would provide some relief, reduce that payment, and that the credit union, most often we can save interest in quite a few cases. I've seen some really good testimonials and success stories where we've reduced that interest rate. So therefore, when we've consolidated, we've lowered their payment as well. It's more manageable. And now you can pay your debts on time and put a little money in the savings as well for those rainy days or for those times where there's an emergency. So again, looking at the big picture, seeing if we could maybe help with another type of loan, home equity consolidation, but again, really encouraging that person to reach out to others as well. And don't be afraid to reach out to those partners, because there are partners such as I mentioned, GreenPath. They can work with the creditors as well. They can come up with a debt management plan if needed, which can reduce some interest, late fees. We call it re-aging after you've made 3 consecutive payments. A lot of credit card companies will bring your loan current. So those are absolutely. So do what you can, control it, don't ignore it, and see what out there to help you either with the credit union, your other lender, or the Green Path as well. And the other thing is, I do want to add, Jenna, before we end, is please be careful of scams or companies that say we can clean up your credit or we can get rid of late reporting, and we can help you clean all this up.
Yeah.
That is one thing I really want to caution people. Don't fall into those companies that say, oh, we can kind of wave that magic wand and we can clear everything up and clean everything up. That is not necessarily true.
Yeah, they're either scams or they don't clean up as good as they say they will. Like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, if you kind of follow that adage.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, LeAnne, so much for being here. We are out of time. This was I feel like we could just keep talking about this. We just scratched the surface of everything, but I learned a lot from you today even, so I hope you did too if you're listening or watching. This has been Good Money Moves. Make sure you tune in next time. And if you haven't before, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to learn more about making good money moves, make sure you visit firstalliancecu.com where you can learn more. And until next time, stay financially empowered.